Metaverse, transforming the user experience.
All right, guys, welcome back. Welcome to this panel about Metaverse. We have 4 brilliant participants here, and I'll let you guys do short introductions. So let's start with you.
My name is Mihkel. I'm the co-founder and CEO of MiBit. We are blockchain fintech consulting company, and we specialize in helping companies scale up and actually create business use cases and make sure that everything that is actually put together is applicable to the real world. And yeah, an avid Metaverse enthusiast as well.
My name is Giulio. I work for Caduceus. We're a layer 1 blockchain. I'm the head of DApp development in the ecosystem. Caduceus is an EVM compatible blockchain where we're looking at bringing tools but also a rendering network for Metaverse developers. We have a network of GPU miners that will provide edge rendering capabilities to video stream your game to the player.
I'm James Mackie. I'm one of the co-founders of moviecoin.com. We use crypto and NFTs to fund movies, and one of the latest movies we funded was Prize Fighter by this man, starring Russell Crowe and Ray Winston.
Hey, I'm Matt Hookings. I run a production company called Camelot Media, which is set up here in Malta and in the UK. And like James said, we just did a last film with Russell Crowe, which we part funded using NFTs and cryptocurrency. There's lots of ideas about the metaverse and different ways that films can be included into the new space going forward.
So let's start with the fundamental question, because many people speak about the metaverse. We do see some demos where it's like some 3D characters running around of graphics quality from like 20 years ago. And this is all the new frontier. And like I spoke about, it's all about the trend. Like the trend is that we will be more and more digital. We'll be living more in a digital world. But to you today, like this year and next year, what is even metaverse? Is it games? Is it online chat with NFTs? What is it? Some takers on this hot question.
I feel like it's mostly a dream with a lot of assets flowing around, exchanging value, but aspirations mostly. But it has the potential of standards being created and interoperability between different platforms, with the idea of creating social experiences that are better than, or at least different to what we normally do and feel.
Yep.
I think Metaverse currently is a very vague, very wide understanding of this social space that can do anything but doesn't really do anything. But I think the direction where we should go and where we can actually utilize is actually a layer between an actual like virtual world and the physical world, so something in between. Currently, we don't have many ways to interact with this world, but we all have phones, all have computers, some have VR headsets, so making the bridge between a virtual self and the physical self, an actual use case in between that companies could, fundraise for. There's revenue streams and so on. So for me, this is Metaverse.
Yeah, it is kind of vague, as you guys said, but it is picking up more prominence in that, the last version of Meta, Facebook's Meta headset, they sold as many as PlayStation 5 sold. Zuckerberg said on Joe Rogan's podcast. So, there's millions of these headsets out there. And when they become more easier to use, so like Sony have just patented a soft gel lens, which is a contact lens with full 180-degree video playback. So when it becomes a more immersive, more easier to use experience, I think that's when it's going to really hit like a mainstream. But the benefits of it are quite obvious, I think, in terms of it's more of a subjective thing. What helps you with your company or in your social life? There's millions of examples of that. So it's just when it gets to the majority of people.
Yeah, I think the bridge is not, it's definitely the next stage of going from mobile phones to how you interact online. I think of it as like, the early stages of, dial-up internet when we were first tuning in and everyone was like, doing all those different sounds to get onto the internet. And you fast forward, I use a good example, Ready Player One. That's where the metaverse will head or go. And Steven Spielberg did predicted that kind of when he released it in 2018. So yeah, it's definitely the next space of where we're all going to be at digitally.
Yeah, and it's also about the form factor, because I like looking at Apple Watch. It's so nice, so stylish. But before Apple Watch, if you had some kind of watch, it was like this nerd thing. You know, here I am with my tech gadget on my hand, and it's kind of like that with all of the VR and even Google Glass, which was years ago. It's not really socially acceptable now to walk into a restaurant with a massive thing on your head, recording everyone and doing this kind of experience where you are digital and everyone else is still not. So what do you think needs to happen in order for this user experience to be socially acceptable, that we can walk around with this AR, VR? And we mentioned Meta 3. Have you guys also seen something else that is taking us closer, as we're speaking right now, to that future?
Ray-Ban are partnering with Facebook, and they're making, like a Ray-Ban glass with, Google Glass was like a bit of a failure many years ago. And as I mentioned, soft cell lenses is another company that has made soft cell lenses with a camera on a contact lens. When you blink, the kinetic energy from your eyes recharge the soft cell lens. So they're all moving forward. They all started like 10 years ago. But they're moving forward, and obviously you've got things like Neuralink, and where you've got full neuron resolution brain implants now, where you can. A scientist in Australia actually has recorded brain patterns using an fMRI, and without seeing the film, people can watch the output of his brain waves and see a movie. So obviously it's getting closer and closer to that. But I think for the short term, I agree. Having these HMDs, they're just too big to walk around in. So until it becomes, I think Ray-Ban would be a perfect, offering that everybody would be happy to use.
I think it has to be built into your everyday life. I used to have a watch, the same thing, check all your heart rate and stuff, and you just get a bit bored after a couple of months. So it has to be built into everyday life. It has to be so, simple and simultaneous, like James said. That it's there, and it's in a chip in your hand or something that's just, it's just built inside you with your everyday life moving forward, I think.
Right. And I know you guys are working with concrete metaverse companies today, and you're very focused on the practicals today. What are you seeing from your perspective, and what do you do right now within the metaverse?
Well, currently we are not consulting any metaverse projects, but looking at the whole space currently, I think where we should move to is actually very much a application use case based, small, kind of focused kind of projects and companies that can actually be profitable. Because FTX went bust, blood is on the streets. It's very difficult now to fundraise for a promise. You need to have an active business model, and you cannot just promise in 10 years it might be something. We need to do something now, so we could get to that 10-year point. We need to iterate. We cannot just jump to something, because otherwise the whole kind of innovation that we are bringing has no physical kind of use case. So what I think is, sure, Apple is going to come out with their VR headset. That's going to boost the whole industry in a huge way. But looking at it from a VR standpoint, yes, Quest 2 or Quest 3, it sold like hotcakes, almost as a PS5. But if you look at the power on hours, no, it's a problem because people buy it, but there is no active use case, it's cumbersome and so on. So we need to go iteration after iteration, but once VR gets simple, lightweight, then we can go to AR, there's going to be glasses, lenses, and this metaverse is going to be data. It's going to be how we store that data, how we transact with that data, and so on.
And I know you guys are building layer 1, adapted for graphics and metaverse. What are you seeing? Which projects, which communities are interested in using this?
Yeah, at the moment, for Caduceus at least, from an ecosystem perspective, there's some interesting game partners and developers. In fact, what I think is the most successful right now, while the hardware and the latency problem is there, and the feel isn't quite there with the metaverse tech that we have, what does seem to be a good building block that you can begin building now is platforms for metaverse developers. For example, I can't remember the company, but one company is creating a avatar standard, and then if you were to comply with that avatar standard, it would be compatible with its framework. So you're hoping that fringe developers comply with various standards, and then their game has a larger audience for players and is more cross-compatible than your traditional Web 2 games. I think that's something which people are thinking about and actually can achieve in a relatively small time frame, which can, circumvent the tech problem and at least give users something new to play with in the next 1 or 2 years.
And in terms of standards, it's one of the key things that made ETH successful with token standard, NFT standard. So when we are speaking about avatar standards, is that an on-chain standard like ERC something that is going to be on-chain, or it's more of a back-end standard, the way you structure your server so it can tell the information about avatars? What kind of standard?
Yeah, I think you're most looking at off-chain standards, because you're looking at how does my Unity avatar, what metadata does my avatar need to have, and we're not really putting avatar features, at least all of them, from a Unity perspective or Unreal Engine onto the blockchain. That would be quite expensive. Instead, it's off-chain, I think.
And about the business model, like you discussed, and the funding of it, which you guys are doing, I read that Meta, they are investing so much money in the metaverse, it's more than anything humans have invested in. Like they compared the going to the moon project versus Meta in billions, adjusted for inflation, and Zuckerberg is already on the way to surpass that. That is crazy. Is the biggest project which is the biggest capital allocation we've seen recently in the recent history that we can measure in dollars and compare. How do we compete with that? Because we want the metaverse to be open and to have digital ownership and Web3 and the cryptocurrencies. We are at a big disadvantage when it comes to funding, especially now with this winter and the FTX collapse. Like you said, no one really wants to be here and invest in dreams anymore. So how do you guys think, how do we compete with that?
The fight to the space race. It feels a little bit like that, where the Russians trying to get there first. I think it's going to be one of the top 5, or it's going to be a small company that's going to just find a very quick, user-friendly way to do it, where literally, you turn on your phone and you already have all your data, like a preloaded app. So, it's so hard to predict, but it's either going to be one of the top 5 that are pumping the money into it and putting the resources behind it, or one of the smaller companies will figure out just a very smart piece of technology that allows it to push forward so quickly. Hopefully, smaller companies, but
I think it's a good thing. I think it's a really good thing that Facebook are doing this. You talk about the moon launch. SLS launched about 2 hours ago. It's NASA's Artemis rocket to the moon. First time to the moon since 1972. And I built a tech company years ago, and we didn't really have much funding, but we knew that if we built it at the right time, it was a SaaS product in 2008, and I knew if I built it at the right time, I could sort of build on the shoulders of Amazon and Microsoft and Google. So the fact that, Facebook are spending billions and losing billions on this, I think is a good thing, because it will open the gateway for us and, all the new innovations. So, yeah.
What do you guys think?
I agree with you, actually. I think the billions they're spending are billions we don't have to, which I don't have many billions. But and what's also great is that at the end of the day, their ecosystem, whether it will be semi-permissionless or full permissionless, who knows, the market will decide what it really wants. If it really wants the decentralized vision, then there will be equivalent technologies using or pivoting from Facebook tech that will help.
Facebook is losing not billions, hundreds of billions in their stock price. But I would say it's a very enthusiastic and very optimistic Zuckerberg dream to spend tens of billions into a project where the actual kind of use case of it is we will try to build this world of a metaverse that for some reason people will all kind of adapt into. And I think this is, at least in my opinion, a bit of a wrong way of going into this, because there is no actual kind of thing that makes hundreds of millions of people actually interact with your system. Sure, there's going to be hundreds, maybe thousands, maybe tens of thousands of people, but there won't be hundreds of millions or billions of people interacting in this metaverse that they're building, because it is very cumbersome. People don't have the money to buy VR headsets. People don't have computing power. New phones cost $1,000. Most people don't have that money. People have low-powered phones. They have low-powered computers. And the experience that they will see from there, it's going to be rough.
Yeah, I mean, that's maybe the biggest criticism that makes sense to me that I've seen, that when you went from TV to phones, is the similar form factor. It is 2D, it's a screen, it's very easy to get on board with. And here it's a totally different form factor. So it's not like the jump from dumb phone to smartphone. This is maybe 10x the jump, because now you gotta have hardware, something in your brain, or some glasses that may or may not be stylish. So it's that's one of the valid criticism against the soon arrival of AR or VR. But let's focus on the actual people that are excited about this. You who are in this space, what do you see in common among the people that are attracted to Metaverse? Are there any common denominators that you are seeing? Because if we know that, then we also know the target audience, we know how to serve the target audience, and we can really build something meaningful as long as we know who we're building it for. So who do you think are the people that are interested in the Metaverse right now and attracted to this?
I actually think everyone is actually interested and excited about Metaverse, but I think there has to be some very concrete kind of personalization in the actual use case of this Metaverse thing that that company is building. So if you can somehow make an avatar, right, which you can do, and there is all of a sudden you can dress that avatar, and then you can buy a subscription service that some stylist will create your clothes and your look on a monthly basis. You get sent clothes, and this is Metaverse, because this is a digital self of a physical person. But going into an actual world, this will be 20 years with a chip in the brain, and then you will sit and that's it. But I think we need to more focus on the physical world and how we have a digital self and how we interact with that, not so much going everything into the digital world and staying there.
I would say that I think right now the companies in the metaverse space, what they have in common is they are at least high-end, maybe luxurious companies that can afford their customers to have expensive equipment. But also I have seen a trend with content learning and teaching and like defense. So it's an immersive experience that can be used by people in combat for the United States. So it's a mixed trend. That the people that are really leveraging it are people that have been leveraging it before the metaverse Web3 was out. Back in simulators driving planes. In the future, hopefully we should see more from the normal people.
Yeah, I think the fact that it's full here today, I think the fact, the other conference rooms full. Last talk we were at the film festival in Cannes, and it was completely full, bigger than last year. I think shows that the trend, even though, you've seen everyone's can't ignore the price of crypto, although that's just one dimension of Web3, where the price isn't doing great, and there's a few things happening like with FTX and stuff at the moment. I'm seeing a general trend that it's going one way, and I think Zuckerberg just believes that. He's been in this position before, where he's had to push a company from very small, and he's seeing that again, and he's just sticking with his vision. And I think a lot of people, I completely agree with the guys, it's a subjective thing. There'll be a hook, there'll be something that will pull my mum in, and then there'll be something that will pull non-techie and then a techie. Whether it's going into Decentraland, you can walk around and it automatically translates everyone's voice. So I was talking to these guys in Vegas City from different parts of China, and they would sort of speak to me and it automatically convert their voice. So just things like that in a game, and more, sooner or later, I think more and more people will be there by default.
Yeah, I think it's for everyone as well, but I still think we're a while away. You look at the transition when everyone first started using Facebook. It took another 5 to 10 years before we came off it and all our mums started using it. So I think for everyone, we're still a little bit far away from that. But in terms of like my space in film, you know, the amount of ideas and opportunities that came at the Cannes Film Festival, like James said, you know, we're at the film festival, and it was mainly just crypto, NFTs, Metaverse, and you know, the amount of guys come up to me saying, look, we can screen your film in the Metaverse, you can come in, you can have people buy pictures, they can go in like a museum, they can see all these exclusive stills, they can meet some of the cast before they even see the film. So there's lots of opportunities, certainly in my space, because there's so many things you can do with screenings and you know, offering people different incentives to just see the film before that. It gives it a little sort of added experience.
Guys, all good things come to an end. Unfortunately, this panel is running out of time. We have 30 seconds for a good question from the audience. Who has a good question? Raise your hand. There you go.
What would you all think is the best utility for going into the metaverse, except to make it like look fancy? It's a better environment, it's more dreamy, but it's a huge invest instead of just doing it in the normal world.
What is your business, can I ask?
I'm working in a stock exchange market.
Okay.
So very financial.
So you have one screen, right? Or 4 screens in front of you?
Yeah.
What, like 21-inch monitors?
22.
22. Okay, so you could have, you know, your entire vision. I know it doesn't sounds a bit dystopian. Your entire vision covered by 21 different screens that are, you know, each one's 10 foot wide, and you look around and you can move them in different places in your room. So like the new VR headsets in the Metaverse are augmented as well. So they augment the real world. So I could have, you know, screens here for about $400 instead of the price that would normally cost me, because it's kind of a subjective thing, because it helps everybody in a different way.
So the augmentation of what we have right now, actually.
But much bigger, much cheaper. You know, like instead of those 4 screens that you have at 21 inch, you could have screens that fill up your entire view.
All right.
Nice. I think I would add also content and content creation and immersive experiences to teach and learn and train staff, I think, is what can be done now quite easily, and what is being done in the future, we'll see.
Okay.
Education and also from an industrial standpoint, having like one person sitting in an office teaching a lower end employee to do something complex that doesn't that employee, for example, doesn't have the experience to do, but you can kind of talk through, and already with Google Glass, what we talked about, they're already still using it in industrial use cases where you're fixing some machine. There is a highly qualified employee somewhere in an office, and the lower qualified employee actually fixing the thing, but they are showing instructions through Google Glass onto the employee point of view. So, and education is, I think, like main thing right now.
Thank you very much to our panelists and to the brave man in the audience. Thanks a lot.